What could be more important than theology in determining your beliefs? How about meaning itself? The reaction people often have to full preterism doesn't seem purely driven by exegetical disagreement. It reflects the interpretative climate people inhabit long before they have ever encountered the perspective. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. Cognitive science makes that fairly clear. The mind is predisposed towards pattern detection. Conrad's work on apophenia and Schirmer's notion of patternicity both suggest that we perceive meaningful connections before certainty is available. Evolutionarily, that bias made sense. Missing a real signal carried greater cost than occasionally seeing one that wasn't there. That dynamic means the possibility of misinterpretation is woven into the process of understanding. The risk of error accompanies the capacity for meaning. That potential to fumble the ball is an inherent risk in reaching to receive it. Without that risk, meaning itself would be inaccessible. What's interesting is that spiritual interpretation grows out of the same cognitive systems we use in everyday life. Boyer's work suggests religious thought grows out of the same mental habits we use every day. When something happens, we instinctively ask what it means and whether someone intended it. We look for purpose, we consider the motives, and if there's agency behind it. We do this almost automatically. Spiritual interpretation, materially speaking, follows from that ordinary habit rather than emerging from some separate mental faculty. Anthropological accounts deepen this picture. Symbolic life appears to have emerged within shared activity before it was formalized into doctrine. Humans developed the capacity to organize behavior around realities not immediately present to the senses. Before structured belief systems emerged, practices like rhythm, music, coordinated movements, these helped people to feel connected and develop a shared sense of purpose. Meaning seems to arise first through participation, only later becoming propositional, spoken, legislated and ratified. Narrative then becomes unavoidable. We don't experience life as raw facts that we later interpret. What happens to us is already shaped by memory and expectation. MacIntyre's observation that humans are storytelling animals reflects the way actions only make sense within unfolding lives. Ricoeur shows that experience becomes shareable once it is expressed in language. Narrative isn't just window dressing, but a fundamental part of how events hold together across time. Historically, meaning-making did not remain private. As societies expanded, spirituality became formalized as a structure that stabilized obligation across generations. In early civilizations, sacred narratives were integrated into civic life. Durkheim's analysis shows how religious categories condense communal norms into symbols experienced as necessary. Spirituality functioned as an overarching framework through which social life was organized rather than as some optional extra added to it. Modernity changed this landscape without removing the human need for meaning. Weber described a shift toward rationalism, rationalization, that made the world feel less obviously meaningful. Taylor shows belief becoming one more option among many, rather than something assumed in the background. McGilchrist argues that modern thinking often prioritizes abstraction and utility. This works well in technical settings, though it can reduce sensitivity to forms of meaning that are lived out, intuitive and relational. The everyday and subjective dimensions of life, where love is experienced, tend to receive less recognition. Meaning does not disappear in modernity. Its publicly recognized forms narrow. The need for transcendence remains, even as cultural confidence in expressing transcendence diminishes. Within that space, ideology often assumes a greater organizing role. Vergulen argues that modern movements redirect salvific expectation into historical and political efforts. Gentile shows how political commitments can acquire ritual form and moral authority. Haidt's research suggests moral reasoning frequently operates in ways that reinforce group identity and shared narratives. Ideology can therefore function as a framework through which people understand the world even when it's way off base and presenting itself as purely rational. At the level of individual experience, this narrowing of meaning has consequences. Frankl's work on the will to meaning suggests that when people lose a stable sense of purpose, they often turn towards behaviours that attempt to fill that gap. These can be quite destructive and dysfunctional. Research on recovery highlights the importance of meaning in sustaining long-term change. Spiritual language frequently functions as a way of reorientating yourself, of orientating life and experience rather than as a strict doctrinal claim. Against this background, the reaction to full preterism becomes easier to understand. Its perceived strangeness may reflect the interpretive climate as much as the theology itself. Cultural frameworks that emphasize material expectation and futurist narratives can make realized fulfillment harder to perceive. A perspective centered on present spiritual participation challenges those expectations and can feel disorientating. Resistance does not always arise from textual disagreement. It often reflects inherited assumptions about how meaning is expected to unfold. The deeper issue concerns how people approach interpretation. Human beings naturally organize experience through frameworks of meaning. What differs is the framework shaping that process. Ideological commitments can shape expectation in advance, while theological traditions can also become influenced by inherited narrative assumptions that affect what feels plausible. Full preterism, as I understand it, points toward a shift in perspective. Fulfillment is located within history, and attention turns toward present participation in a spiritual reality grounded in love rather than ongoing expectation. That shift challenges both materialist reduction and futurist assumptions, which helps explain why it often meets resistance from different directions. So the conversation returns to interpretation. Expectations shaped by existing frameworks can limit openness to the spirit of truth from the very beginning. But as the clock racks hours and futurist expectations become ever noticeably fruitless, the interpretative climate change that evidences full preterism will rise in the consciousness of humanity. As I see it, Full Preterism offers a compelling orientation towards truth. It engages historical fulfillment directly and allows evidence to guide understanding, even when that process places it at odds with prevailing assumptions. Hi everyone, thank you for supporting this video. I'm thinking of doing a series of interviews following this one, and I am looking forward to just hearing from the community. What a wonderful community we are building here on YouTube and elsewhere. I'm really starting to feel this sea change in how Christians engage with eschatology, and I feel the spirit of truth is able to break through those gatekeepers and through those people who would narrow the legitimacy of perspectives. It's like, hey, we have the freedom to search out a matter. And it's that Berean spirit. Speaking of which, I've just finished recording with Rick Welch over in Burrows of Berea. I'll put a link in the description box and we can support his channel too. That video's not out yet, but it will be soon, and when it is, I'll post a community notification. Anyways, I look forward to hearing from you. Anyone who wants to reach out, my email is in the channel description. Thank you very much, and God bless. Bye for now.